Upon realizing she had found an ancient structure near Jerusalem, she turned to ancient texts in search of answers. And what began as a simple verification quickly transformed into something much bigger. Beneath hills worn by time and layers of forgotten history, a silence of thousands of years seemed to have finally been broken. But before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. For centuries, the idea of Solomon's lost tomb was treated as myth. Stories passed down through generations spoke of a king of unparalleled wealth, whose wisdom and power marked antiquity. But there was never a confirmed location. No tomb identified, no concrete proof, only theories, failed searches, and a question that has spanned millennia. Where might the resting place of one of history's most enigmatic kings be? Solomon inherited the throne at a young age, succeeding his father, King David. But he didn't just maintain the kingdom, he expanded it. Under his rule, Israel prospered as never before. Trade routes stretched to distant regions like Ophir and Tarshish, bringing exotic riches. Copper mines in regions like Timnah fueled the economy, while the first temple, built with impressive precision, became the spiritual and political center of the nation. His wisdom became legendary. Stories like the trial of two women disputing the motherhood of a child have spanned generations, solidifying his image as a just ruler. The visit of the Queen of Sheba, described in ancient texts, further reinforces his fame. According to accounts, she traveled long distances just to test him, and came away impressed. Even with all this, one crucial detail has always remained shrouded in mystery: his tomb. No definitive record, no precise location, only speculations ranging from hidden caves to secret chambers beneath the Temple Mount. Over time, many archaeologists abandoned the search. It seemed impossible to find something so ancient in a region that was both so explored and so politically sensitive. But then, something unexpected happened. Dr. Emily Carter, a specialist more accustomed to deciphering ancient manuscripts than excavating land, found an unusual clue in tax records from the period attributed to the reign of Solomon. Amidst texts in ancient Hebrew, there were mentions of resource shipments to an unofficial location near the so-called City of David. This sparked something. Using subsurface scanning technology capable of identifying structures beneath solid rock, his team began mapping a hillside in the Silwan region. The conditions were extremely difficult. The soil was unstable, the area was sensitive, and any mistake could compromise not only the excavation but also the surrounding historical heritage. Still, they continued. Then, a natural event changed everything. After a heavy rain, part of the ground gave way, revealing a small opening. Almost imperceptible, but enough to raise suspicions. When the sensors were positioned there, the result was immediate. There was something underneath. Not natural, artificial structures. At a depth of about 13 meters, a network of tunnels began to be revealed. The excitement was instant, but so was the fear. Ancient structures like those often include traps or false passages, designed to deter intruders. Every move had to be calculated. Upon examining the inscriptions near the entrance, Carter realized that it was far from mere ritual ornamentation. There was logic, sequence, repetition. The symbols weren't there for aesthetic reasons. They followed a structure, almost like a coded language. Some were repeated at regular intervals, while others seemed to mark specific points, like instructions. It was possibly a system of protection, not physical, but intellectual. A mechanism created to prevent anyone from advancing without understanding what lay before them. For days, the team worked with extreme care. No touch was made without prior registration. Three-dimensional scanners captured every millimeter of the surface, while controlled beams of light revealed reliefs invisible to the naked eye. Small variations in the rock began to appear, marks that suggested moving parts, almost imperceptible joints. The environment was unusually silent. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was a constant feeling of pressure, as if the space were laden with something ancient, something that still remained there, until it finally happened. One of the sections of rock responded. There was no crack, no audible mechanism, just a slow, almost organic movement. The stone recoiled a few centimeters, releasing a dark opening. The air that escaped was cold, dense, laden with a smell that no one could fully identify. It wasn't mold. It wasn't decomposition. It was something drier, older, preserved. It was the first access to a space sealed off for thousands of years. When they entered, the feeling was immediate. This was no ordinary tomb. There were no signs of decomposition, nor typical burial structures. Instead, there was organization, intention. It was a chamber, and inside it, Objects, precisely aligned metal pots, covered in ancient Hebrew inscriptions that still reflected the light in a surprising way. The material seemed to withstand time in an unusual manner. Beside them, carefully crafted boxes held jewels and precious stones cut with a level of detail that indicated a highly refined technique. Fragments of ivory displayed meticulous carvings, patterns that suggested influences from African regions, perhaps even commercial or cultural connections that are still poorly understood. A sealed container caught my attention. When opened with extreme care, it released a light yet unmistakable aroma. Spices, still present, still recognizable after millennia. It didn't make sense within the known standards of preservation. It was as if time inside had been slowed down. But then came the details that changed everything. Some artifacts didn't follow the same pattern as the others. Unknown symbols appeared engraved on metallic and ceramic surfaces. They didn't correspond to any cataloged linguistic system of the region or period. Other objects presented shapes and finishes that seemed too advanced, extremely precise cuts, almost perfect symmetry, techniques that theoretically shouldn't have existed in that historical context. Doubt immediately arose. Did it truly belong to a single era? Or had that place been reused across generations, each leaving its own mark, its own knowledge, its own technologies? Among the items scattered throughout the chamber, fragments of text began to emerge. Some were engraved on tablets, others on stone or metal surfaces. Some of them made direct reference to the construction of the temple described in ancient records, details that coincided with known accounts, but with a much greater level of precision. Measurements, alignments, instructions. But other texts were different. They didn't describe events, they described processes. Complex geometric patterns appeared repeatedly, accompanied by proportions reminiscent of structural calculations. Numerical relationships indicated an advanced understanding of balance, weight distribution, and perhaps even the physical properties of materials. It wasn't just architecture, it was engineering on an unexpected level. And it was at that moment that the team noticed something even more unsettling. Some of these patterns coincided with the symbols found at the entrance, as if the code protecting the place was also present in the knowledge kept within it. As if that chamber wasn't just a storage space, but part of a larger system, a system designed not only to conceal, but to select who would be prepared to understand what was left there. And then, something even more intriguing appeared. A symbol, a six-pointed star, precisely engraved on a wall. Known today as a symbol associated with David, but in that context, it seemed to carry an even deeper meaning. Some scholars believe it could be linked to the so-called Mark of Solomon, a mystical reference mentioned in ancient texts. Nearby, a small sealed box caught their attention. There was no visible opening mechanism, no clear indication of what was inside. The team decided not to open it at that moment, and that's when the discovery took on another dimension. An inscription. 5 lines in ancient Hebrew, carefully carved into the wall. The preliminary translation suggested something personal, a phrase that sounded like a statement from Solomon himself, a mixture of reflection and authority. The reaction was immediate. Experts around the world began analyzing the images. Some claimed that this could be definitive proof of the king's historical existence. Others raised doubts, questioning the authenticity of the inscriptions and pointing to possible influences from later periods. The debate erupted, but the team continued. In another area of the chamber, under a thin layer of dust, new inscriptions were found. This time, mentioning a royal visit around 950 BC, attributed to the Queen of Sheba. The text seemed to align perfectly with accounts found in both the Bible and the Quran. For some, this was a stunning confirmation. For others, too much of a coincidence. And then, another discovery. A ring, made of ancient metal, with a clear engraving of a 6-pointed star. Preliminary tests indicated a composition consistent with the 10th century BC. The possibility that the object belonged to Solomon was considered, but not confirmed. Even so, something was still missing. The tomb. Despite all the richness, all the inscriptions, all the clues, no sign of a body, no direct evidence of burial. This raised a new hypothesis. What if it wasn't a tomb? What if it was something more? A storage place? A ritual space? A hidden archive? Artificial intelligence analyses indicated the possibility of even deeper structures beneath that chamber, unexplored cavities, hidden rooms. But digging deeper isn't simple. The region is extremely sensitive. Any intervention requires authorization, negotiations, and extreme care. For now, everything remains on hold. What has been found so far is enough to change narratives, to raise questions, to challenge certainties. But perhaps this is only the beginning. Because if there's more below, if there's a final chamber still sealed, then the true answer may still be hidden. And now I want to know your opinion. Do you believe that this discovery could really be linked to King Solomon? Or could it all just be an incredible historical coincidence? Leave your comment, subscribe to the channel, and follow along, because if this next layer is opened, it could change everything. And somewhere in that still untouched darkness, perhaps the answer is waiting.